Hey everybody, and welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be cracking open Gavin de Becker's The Gift of Fear.
Oh, yeah.
A book that, really makes you think differently about personal safety and violence.
It really does.
And how can we use fear to our advantage?
Right.
That's kind of what we're exploring.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? We're often told to suppress fear and,
Right.
Just get over it.
Yeah.
But de Becker actually says it's like a vital survival tool. He even calls it a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. He actually, starts out by laying out this really stark reality of violence in America. And one statistic that really hit me was that in the 2 years before the book came out, more Americans died from gunshots than in the entire Vietnam War.
It's true. And it's just a reminder of
Wild.
how widespread it is.
Yeah.
And he challenges that common thought, it won't happen to me.
Right.
So he really wants us to understand that violence can affect anyone.
Yeah, you can't be naive about it. And then, of course, he goes into, violence against women.
Yeah.
Which is particularly alarming.
Mm-hmm.
Women are more likely to end up in the ER from a partner's assault than from a car accident, robbery, or even rape combined.
That's right.
It's really makes you think about the hidden nature of so much violence.
And that's where the idea of intuition comes in.
Yes.
He really argues that tuning into our gut feelings is crucial.
Right.
And he tells that story about the woman who felt uneasy about a guy in the elevator.
Right.
But ignored her intuition.
Uh-huh.
And unfortunately, she was attacked.
That's so scary. It makes you realize how often we dismiss those subtle feelings, Oh, I'm just being paranoid.
Yeah.
But what's really fascinating is how he kind of breaks down these, what he calls pre-incident indicators or PIVNs, and shows how seemingly innocent behaviors can actually be warning signs.
Right. Like in the case of Kelly, the woman who was attacked.
Yeah.
Do you remember that part?
I do.
He points out how the attacker used forced teaming.
Yes.
Trying to create a sense of camaraderie with her, like we're in this together.
Yeah, it's like we're both alone here or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Almost like trying to manipulate the situation to make her feel obligated to him.
Yeah, and then there was that loan sharking tactic where he offered to help with her bags without her even asking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like he was trying to make her indebted to him.
Right.
And then he also points out how the attacker also kept dismissing Kelly's no when she declined his help.
Yes.
Which
brings us to another really important point. The power of no.
Yes.
De Becker's very adamant that no is a complete sentence.
It is.
And that we should never feel pressured to negotiate it.
Right.
Especially with strangers.
And he highlights the power dynamic at play when someone disregards a no.
Right.
It shows a real disregard for boundaries.
Yes.
And a desire for control.
Yeah, it's like, I don't respect your right to say no. Yeah. Which is terrifying, honestly, but it also ties into this concept of the interview that he talks about.
Yes.
It's basically the process that predators use to select a victim.
Right.
And he uses this really striking example of a man approaching a woman alone in a parking lot.
Yes.
The predator's looking for signs of vulnerability, someone who might be easily manipulated or controlled.
Right.
And then he compares the responses of someone who appears hesitant and intimidated versus someone who projects confidence and sets clear boundaries.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the importance of assertiveness in those situations.
He's not saying that we should be aggressive or anything like that.
Right.
But just project a sense of self-assurance.
Right.
That you're not an easy target.
Makes you think about how we can shift our mindset from being reactive to proactive when it comes to safety.
It does.
Yeah. Instead of just hoping nothing bad happens, we can actively take steps to reduce our risk.
And that's what makes de Becker's work so empowering.
Yeah. He gives us tools and knowledge to be more proactive about our safety.
He also dives into this idea of promises to kill.
Yes.
And how we tend to misinterpret threats. Which is really interesting because he explains that people who threaten to kill are often less likely to actually act on those threats.
Right.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, it is.
It's like, what?
Well, what's fascinating is he says the threat itself can be a way of expressing anger without resorting to physical violence.
Like a pressure valve almost.
Exactly.
Wow.
And he even shares a story from his threat assessment class.
Oh, really?
Where he instructed his students to threaten him.
Oh, my God.
Of course, there was no real danger.
Right.
But it just illustrates how threats are often more about communication and control
than
an actual intent to harm.
So we shouldn't take all threats lightly, though, right?
Of course not. No.
Well, yeah.
He emphasizes that context is crucial.
Right.
A threat made during a heated argument between family members
Might carry a different level of risk
totally
than a threat from a stranger with a history of violence.
Right. So it's about understanding the nuances of a situation.
Absolutely.
And not just reacting out of fear.
Right.
Which I guess is kind of a recurring theme in the book.
It is. We're going to be diving deeper into that.
Yes, stay tuned, because in the next part, we'll be unpacking some of the specific tactics predators use and how you can recognize them.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We'll also be exploring how to handle threats effectively.
Yes.
And what steps you can take to be more proactive about your safety.
It's going to be a fascinating journey, so make sure you come back for more.
I can't wait. So, when we look back at the first part of our deep dive, the case of Michael Perry really stands out to me.
It does.
Do you remember how
I do.
DeBecker's team wasn't just focused on whether Perry was dangerous,
Right.
but on predicting how that danger might manifest?
Yeah, that's right. They weren't just asking, is this guy going to snap? But, if he does, what's it going to look like?
Right.
Where is he going to go?
Yeah.
And that's a whole other level.
Exactly. And that's where DeBecker's concept of vantage comes in.
Right.
To accurately predict someone's actions, you need to be in a position to see those pre-incident indicators.
Okay.
Those subtle signs. Context is everything.
So, with Perry, knowing he'd been checking out books on tracking wasn't just a random detail.
Right.
It suggested that he might try to move undetected, maybe even stalk someone.
That's it. It added a crucial piece to the puzzle. Yeah. And then they were also considering imminence.
Right.
Was this a threat that could be put off, or was there an immediate danger that demanded action right now?
Yeah, and that story definitely had that sense of urgency to it.
It did.
It felt like they were in a race against time to find this guy.
They were.
Before something terrible happened.
And they used comparable events to inform their predictions.
Right.
So they looked at other cases of attacks on public figures.
Right.
Studying the patterns of behavior, the motives.
Right.
Those pre-incident indicators we keep talking about.
Yeah, it's wild how cases from the past, Ruth Steinhagen shooting that baseball player.
Exactly.
Or Valerie Solanas attacking Andy Warhol.
Yes.
Can help us understand the mind of someone like Michael Perry.
It all goes back to that idea we touched on earlier.
Right.
The evolution of idolization.
Right.
How fame, especially in the age of media, can get twisted into something dangerous.
Yeah. DeBecker also talks about the importance of frequency in making predictions.
Yes.
So basically, the more often something has happened before,
right,
the more likely it is to happen again.
Yes.
It's kind of like probability.
Precisely.
Right.
And that's where statistics can be so helpful.
Yeah.
For example, we know that most stalkers actually know their victims.
Right.
Which helps us prioritize resources.
Okay.
And focus on the most likely scenarios.
So it's about separating the real risk from the ones that just feel scary. Because we see them on the news all the time.
That's right.
Oh, my God.
He uses this really striking analogy.
Okay.
He says the energy of violence moves through society like a wave, touching everyone in different ways.
Okay.
Some people, maybe they just feel a little ripple.
Right.
Others get caught in a full-on tsunami.
Wow.
But no one is completely immune.
Right.
And that's why, understanding those survival signals, honing that intuition is so crucial for navigating these sometimes dangerous waters.
That's right. He also talks about how our brains are wired to see what we want to see.
Yeah.
How denial can actually blind us to danger that's right in front of us.
It's that classic, it won't happen to me mentality.
Yes.
We tell ourselves violence only happens to other people.
In other places.
In other places.
Yeah.
But DeBecker's point is that this kind of thinking can make us more vulnerable.
Right.
Because we're not prepared to recognize the warning signs.
It's like walking through a dark alley with your eyes closed, pretending the danger isn't there just because you can't see it.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. So he really emphasizes being aware of our surroundings.
Yes.
Noticing those little things that feel off.
Yeah.
Even if we can't explain why.
Remember that woman in the elevator?
Right.
How she dismissed that uneasy feeling. We all do that sometimes.
We do.
Yeah. We tell ourselves we're overreacting or being silly.
Yeah. But he's saying that's our intuition trying to tell us something important.
It is.
It's like our internal alarm system.
It is. And the more we pay attention to it, the more finely tuned it becomes.
Right.
We get better at recognizing those subtle cues.
He also talks about how predators use charm and niceness as weapons.
Yes.
Which is almost counterintuitive.
Right.
Right. We're taught that nice people are safe people.
Exactly. But DeBecker shows how that niceness can be a manipulation tactic.
Right.
It's about lulling the victim into a false sense of security.
Like the attacker in Kelly's case.
Right.
Remember how he was all charming and helpful at first?
Yes.
Offering to carry her bags?
But DeBecker points out that kind of unsolicited niceness
Right.
often has an ulterior motive.
It's about gaining control of the situation, establishing a power dynamic.
Yes.
And that's why setting boundaries is so crucial.
It is.
It's about asserting yourself,
Yes.
making it clear that you're not going to be pushed around.
Exactly.
And being wary of anyone who tries to cross those lines.
Absolutely.
He also offers some really practical advice for dealing with threats.
He does.
Especially in the workplace.
Yes.
Which I think a lot of people can relate to.
Absolutely. He emphasizes that the power of a threat lies with the listener,
Okay.
not the speaker.
Interesting.
So if you react with fear and anxiety, you're essentially validating the threat.
Oh.
You're giving the threatener exactly what they want.
It's like feeding the monster almost.
Exactly. The more scared you act, the more powerful they feel.
Yeah.
So DeBecker suggests staying calm
Okay.
and refusing to engage with the threat directly.
So don't get pulled into their drama.
Exactly.
Got it.
He even uses the analogy of a bomb threat.
Okay.
If everyone panics and acts like it's definitely real,
Yeah.
it creates chaos,
Yeah.
which is exactly what the bomber might be hoping for.
Right. So it's not about being naive and assuming every threat's a joke,
No.
but understanding that there's a difference between someone blowing off steam
Yes.
and someone who poses a genuine danger.
Right. And DeBecker gives us some guidelines for assessing that risk.
Okay.
For instance, if the threat is specific,
Right.
if the person has access to weapons,
Mm-hmm.
if they have a history of violence, those are all red flags that you should absolutely take seriously.
So it's about being aware but not letting fear paralyze you.
That's right.
Which actually brings us to another important point, taking precautions.
Absolutely. It's about taking steps to reduce your risk, even if you don't perceive an immediate threat.
So simple things like locking your doors, being aware of your surroundings,
Yes.
choosing well-lit and populated areas when you're out at night, those are all precautions.
Yeah.
That can make a real difference.
DeBecker compares it to wearing a seatbelt when you're driving.
Okay.
You don't wait until you've had an accident to start taking that precaution right.
Right.
You do it because you understand there's always a risk, even if it feels small.
It's about being proactive and responsible for your own safety without letting fear dictate your every move.
Exactly. And there's one more element of prediction that DeBecker talks about.
Okay.
Recovery.
What does he mean by that?
It's about how you respond after a crisis or a traumatic event,
Okay.
how you process what happened and move forward.
So it's not just about avoiding danger,
Right.
but also about how you cope if something bad does happen.
Right. But Becker stresses the importance of seeking support,
Okay.
whether it's from friends, family, or professionals.
It's that reminder that you don't have to go through tough times alone.
That's right.
There are people who can help you process and heal.
And that's what's so powerful about DeBecker's work as a whole.
Yeah.
He gives us this framework for understanding violence,
Yeah.
a language for talking about it, and a set of tools for protecting ourselves.
It's about empowerment, isn't it?
It is.
It's about reclaiming that feeling of agency
Yes.
in a world that can sometimes feel scary and unpredictable.
Absolutely. And it's about recognizing that fear, when understood and used wisely, is not our enemy.
Right.
It's a gift, a guide, a protector.
That's a really powerful way to think about it.
Yeah.
And in the final part of our deep dive,
Yes.
we'll talk more about how to put these concepts into practice,
Absolutely.
how to integrate DeBecker's insights into our daily lives so we can feel more confident, resilient, and safe.
It's going to be a fascinating discussion.
It is so. Make sure you join us for part 3.
I'll be here.
Welcome back, you guys, for the final part of our deep dive into the gift of fear. It's been quite a journey exploring these ideas with you, and I'm really looking forward to wrapping things up with some of the most, crucial takeaways.
One of the things that I think is so empowering about DeBecker's approach is that he really encourages us to become active participants in our own safety.
Right.
It's not about living in fear,
Right.
but about having the knowledge and the awareness to make informed choices.
It's so true. And he really emphasizes that we're not helpless victims.
We're not.
We have this incredible built-in survival mechanism.
We do.
Our intuition that's constantly scanning for potential threats, even if we're not consciously aware of it.
And yet so often we doubt those gut feelings.
We do.
You know, we tell ourselves we're being paranoid or overreacting.
Right. Especially as women, we're often conditioned to downplay our own instincts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like we second guess ourselves before we even give those feelings a chance.
We do. And De Becker really challenges us to kind of change that mindset.
He does.
He compares it to a smoke detector. You wouldn't ignore the alarm just because you can't see the fire right.
Right.
You trust that it's going off for a reason.
That's such a great analogy.
And it's the same with our intuition.
It is.
When we feel that unease, you know, that sense of something's not right.
Yeah.
That's our internal alarm system going off.
It is.
It might be really subtle.
It might.
You know, a stranger standing a little too close to date, making a comment that rubs you the wrong way.
Yes.
Even just a change in someone's demeanor that you can't quite put your finger on.
The key is to pay attention.
Right.
To trust that gut feeling.
Even if you can't logically explain it.
Yes. And then take steps to protect yourself.
Right.
You know, it's always better to err on the side of caution.
De Becker also talks a lot about setting boundaries.
He does.
Which can be really challenging.
It can.
In situations where you feel pressured to be polite or accommodating.
Right. And recognizing that no is a complete sentence.
Yes.
You don't owe anyone an explanation for enforcing your boundaries.
Yeah. It's true. That's something a lot of us, myself included, have had to learn. It can be really hard, especially with people who are manipulative.
It is.
Or use those tactics that De Becker talks about, like forced teaming and charm. Yeah. It's almost like they're trying to create this false sense of intimacy.
They are.
To lower your defenses.
To make you feel safe so that you'll let your guard down.
They might offer unsolicited help, shower you with compliments.
Yeah.
Or, you know, try to make you feel like you're in cahoots with them.
Right. All to gain control of the situation.
Yes. It's so insidious.
It is.
Because it often comes disguised as kindness.
It does. And De Becker reminds us that true kindness respects boundaries.
Right. So if someone's, you know, niceness feels pushy or makes you uncomfortable, that's a huge red flag.
Huge.
And the best way to respond is with assertiveness.
Yes.
Clearly communicate your boundaries.
Right.
And don't engage with anyone who tries to overstep them.
I love that.
Yeah. He also offers some really solid advice, I think.
He does.
For handling threats, which I think a lot of people struggle with.
Especially in a work environment.
Yes. And one of the most important things that he emphasizes,
I agree,
is that the power of a threat actually lies with the listener, not the speaker.
Yes.
So if you react with fear and anxiety, you're giving the threatener exactly what they want.
You're validating their power over you.
Right?
And so De Becker suggests taking a deep breath, staying calm, and refusing to engage with the threat directly.
Don't get pulled into their drama.
Exactly.
Right.
He also reminds us that most threats are actually empty.
Right.
You know, it's a way for the person to blow off steam, but they don't actually intend to follow through.
Of course, that doesn't mean we should ignore every threat.
Of course not.
He provides some really useful guidelines, I think, for assessing the level of risk.
Yes, like if the threat is specific.
Right.
If the person has access to weapons. If they have a history of violence. Those are all serious red flags.
Right. So it's a balancing act.
It is.
Being aware of the potential dangers, but not letting fear paralyze you.
Right.
Which brings us back to the idea of taking precautions.
Precautions are so important.
They are.
It's about taking those simple, everyday steps to reduce your risk, even if you don't feel like you're in immediate danger.
Right, like locking your doors, being aware of your surroundings, choosing well-lit and populated areas when you're out at night.
Exactly.
They may seem small, but they can make a world of difference.
And it's not about living in a constant state of fear.
Right.
It's about just having that healthy awareness.
Right.
And taking reasonable steps to protect yourself.
He compares it to wearing a seatbelt when you drive.
Right.
You know, you do it not because you expect to get into an accident, but because you understand there's always a risk.
There is.
Even if it's small.
It's about taking ownership of your own safety.
Yes.
Not waiting for something bad to happen before you start thinking about it.
Exactly. And finally, De Becker talks about the importance of recovery. That's an interesting concept. What does he mean by that?
It's about how you respond after a crisis. Or a traumatic event.
Yeah.
How you process what happened and move forward.
So it's not just about preventing bad things from happening, but also about having the resilience to cope if they do.
That's exactly right.
You know, when you look at De Becker's work as a whole, it's really about empowerment.
It is.
It's about understanding the dynamics of violence. Yes. But it's also about recognizing your own strength and agency.
It's about reclaiming that sense of control in a world that can often feel chaotic and unpredictable.
And ultimately, it's about shifting your relationship with fear.
It is.
Instead of letting it paralyze you,
Right.
you learn to use it as a source of information and a guide to making safer choices.
And Becker reminds us that fear, when properly understood, is not the enemy.
It's not.
It's a gift,
Yeah.
a protector, a valuable tool for navigating the world.
It's true. This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into the gift of fear.
Yeah.
I feel like we've only scratched the surface
We have.
of this really powerful book. If you're interested in learning more, I highly recommend checking out the full book.
I do too.
It's a must-read for anyone who wants to understand the subtle signs of danger and empower themselves with the tools for staying safe.
And remember, trust your intuition,
Yes.
set boundaries, take precautions,
Yeah.
and never hesitate to seek help when you need it.
That's right. Stay aware, stay empowered, and stay safe.
Yes.
Until next time.